Angus Taylor, welcome.
Good to be with you, Sarah.
Just before we come to the costings, because we haven't had Peter Dutton on the programme during the campaign. On the campaign, analysts, pollsters, internal Liberal Party voices are saying this campaign is the worst they've ever seen. How do you explain that?
Well, I'll leave commentary like that to the commentators, Sarah.
It's some of your colleagues saying it.
Well, I'm not a commentator, and I'll leave that to them. What I can say is what I'm seeing on the booths, and I've been at pre-poll booths around the country over the last couple of weeks, is people constantly saying to me they can't afford another 3 years of what they've seen, that they can see that there's a better way and we need to get the country back on track. And
nonetheless,
they're messages that have clearly resonated.
You must be concerned. You're trying to win an election on Saturday. We've got numbers for preferred Prime Minister from Newspoll recently that have Peter Dutton on 35, Anthony Albanese on 51. How do you explain these numbers?
Well, the thing I'm most concerned about is the standard of living of Australian households and what's happened to it.
You're not concerned about a very negative view of your leader during the campaign as it reaches its end?
Peter Dutton is a strong leader, and there's no question that we have seen a smear campaign against him over the last couple of months, the scale of which we haven't seen often before in this country.
So this has nothing to do with mistakes during the campaign, of which there have been a number of salient ones. You're saying this is all about Labor smear?
Well, I'm saying that there has been a Labor smear campaign. There's been a Labor-like campaign too on a whole range of issues, some of which we might talk about in a moment. But the important point here is that the thing I'm most concerned about isn't any of this commentary. It's what's happened to Australians' standard of living, what's happened to household budgets, what's happened to the government budget. And all of that needs to be fixed. There is a big job ahead. There's a real mess there. And I don't think Labor is capable of fixing that mess over the next 3 years.
If Labor pulls off a reversal of its political fortunes compared to, say, January, February this year, there'll be huge pressure on Peter Dutton to step down, won't there?
Look, again, I'm not going to get into any of this. I'm in the middle, we are, or the back end of an election campaign. We've got a couple of days to go, and my focus is on making sure that our message of a better way of getting back on track is out there, loud and clear, and I'll continue to prosecute that case in my electorate and other seats I go to over the next few days.
If those numbers, both in the polls and those voices from inside the Liberal Party, turn out to be correct, are you prepared to step up as leader?
You know, Sarah, there's one job I'm focused on right now, and that's becoming Treasurer of this country. And I think we have a government that has served Australia badly. It's taken Australia backwards. 7 quarters in a row, 21 months of GDP per capita not moving forward, it's going backwards. All the economic indicators have been bad for Australians. They're worse off than they were 3 years ago. And I want to be Treasurer and would be the greatest privilege of my life to become Treasurer because I think we can do better. One
of the biggest issues for the campaign was the echoing of Trump values, Trump policies. You're nodding, that's interesting. Were you aware that Trump's strategist, Chris Lasavita, was in Australia working on strategic issues as they've been reported with or for Peter Dutton? No,
my understanding is that that's not right and that hasn't happened. I only learned about who this person was. I never heard of them before.
You never heard
about
of Chris
an hour
Lasavita.
ago, Sarah.
He is the political genius, some would say, who brought Donald Trump to the White House this time. Him and Susie Wiles together are the ones that created the campaign that was successful for Donald Trump. You've never heard of him?
Well, I know who Susie Wiles is. I have heard of her, but not this other chap. But my understanding, I was asked this question an hour ago and I had no idea who this person was.
So you don't think the Liberal Party or any individual in the Liberal Party has been talking to Chris Lasavita about finding some solutions for Peter Dutton's campaign?
My understanding is he hasn't been a part of our campaign, no.
Campaign? What about conversations adjacent to the campaign?
I learnt about who this guy was an hour ago. I don't know the first thing about him, and so that's all I know.
Your deficit over the next 2 years is $8 billion bigger than Labor's. Why isn't such a large deficit in 2 years a threat to inflation in Australia?
Well, Sarah, you well know that a budget is over 4 years, and over that time period we've got a $14 billion improvement in the budget bottom line and a $40 billion reduction in debt. And that is the pathway we need to be on. That's assuming Labor's own forecasts on growth and productivity, and of course growth and productivity under Labor have been truly lacklustre, as I said a moment ago. We can do better than that. In the short term, we've got to get household budgets back to where they should be. They're back down. They're down about 8% since Labor came to power. Household disposable incomes.
7.3, I think, is the right number.
Well, yeah, but look, we can split hairs about that, but it's a big number. And I tell you what, the pain of that is everywhere I go and everywhere I see it.
Let's come to some of your measures. Which departments in Canberra will your 41,000 public service cuts come from?
Well, natural attrition comes across the board, and that's the focus, as we've said all the way along.
Across the board, we want to know which departments in Canberra you will get your 41,000 public service positions from.
As I was trying to say, natural attrition is happening across the board, and we have been working very closely with the Parliamentary Budget Office. We are very confident that the 41,000 can be achieved through natural attrition and a hiring freeze. Now, a significant number of these jobs are not yet employed, and we won't do that. We won't proceed with those. They're in Labor's budget, but we're not going to proceed with those.
6,000?
Yeah, that's right.
6,000.
Yeah.
So we're talking about 35,000 positions.
Yep.
So which departments are they coming from again?
As I say, natural attrition occurs in every department. Now, there'll be some reallocation.
If you've been working with the Parliamentary Budget Office, you'd have some idea where those figures
We've worked on natural attrition across the board with the Parliamentary Budget Office, and we've worked with them very closely on these numbers right through to the last few days.
Do you expect some of those jobs will come from Treasury, for example?
Yes, of course. There will be natural attrition in Treasury, as there will be in every other department. I mean, that's what we expect. This is a very clear strategy, and we're confident, because of the size of the public sector as it's got to under Labor, that natural attrition rate can support us bringing down the size of government back to where it was when we were last in government. And we're more than confident that that can be a very effective, very capable government. I've spent my career before politics, as you know. Big part of my job was how to get an organisation to be its best, to do its best, how to help people working in an organisation to be their best and do their best. And I'm determined that if I get the privilege of being Treasurer of this country, that we do exactly that in Canberra, as so many people right across this country in private sector organisations are doing, including the ABC, doing every single day.
Let me just ask you about costs for nuclear energy, because now we're starting to see some costs off budget in these figures. You've got $36.4 billion for building the first nuclear reactors.
So that's two actually.
Two reactors. Are these costs based on building Westinghouse 1,000 reactors?
Yeah, look, they're in line with the plan that we've already laid out. There's the first two generators, the two, as you know, two different ones, 2 gigawatts, roughly speaking.
And these are the
each.
Westinghouse 1,000.
And they are in line with what we've already said in our plan. And look, here's the point, that in the actual budget, it's $400 million. Labor is trying to claim, and it's a complete lie, that there's $600 billion of spending required in our budget. That is completely wrong.
Just to come back to that question, because I want to be clear about this before we get to Saturday, what will the cost be if you need to move to the more expensive dry-cool reactors?
Well, these are costings that were done independently of us. And we're very confident in them, Sarah. So we're not doing other scenarios, because that's the scenario we're working to. It was an independent costing done by Frontier Economics, and it was based on and consistent with work that's been done by the CSIRO. So we're confident in these costings. And we're confident that Labor is telling lies about the costs.
Are you concerned you're proposing yourself as the alternative Treasurer with no plan to get the budget back to surplus?
Well, you know, there is a plan to get the budget back to balance. And I've spoken with you about this in the past. If we can accelerate growth in the economy, get investment moving, get businesses investing, build confidence in our great nation, then I'm confident we can get our budget back to balance faster than even we're proposing to, along the lines of what's been laid out in this costing.
Angus Taylor, thank you very much for joining us. We wish you the best of luck on Saturday.
Thanks, Sarah.